On today's Locked On Mavs, Locked On Suns crossover, let's talk about the Suns. Why are they so good? Who are they going to defend Luka with? And what are they going to try to force the Mavs to do to win this series? Talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs, Locked On Suns. Let's go.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns. My name is Nick Angstadt. I'm the media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, host of Locked On Mavs. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs and Locked On Suns your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best thing you can do right now is subscribe to the show and leave a comment below. Mavs fans, Locked On Mavs listeners, Raccoon Squad members, you know what to do under Locked On Suns videos, and leave a comment under Locked On Mavs as well. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor, writer at Mavs.com, the sultry sun, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, I didn't. Did y'all send the Zoom link to David Locke? I didn't know if the Jazz were supposed to be or. Oh,
yeah, I forgot to set it up with him this time.
I didn't.
Jake Madison going to show up, Locked On Pelicans? No?
I forgot that, Locke has more free time right now. Brendon Kleen, it's so good to see you. This is like, we're hyped that it's a second round, but are you just riding into year two of this saying it's just a second round? I've been here.
He's been here, done that. He's an old pro now. It's been one year of some playoff success. Been there, done that.
You're puffing me up so that the Mavs fans that listen to you guys think that I think that, and I do not think that.
Are you thinking about 2006? That was a good series.
That was a good series.
Yeah, look, we're not getting into history. We're not getting into the 2018 draft
because there is
right now. It's just right now. It's just Monday, game one.
Let's talk about our title years and compare the title run.
What's that like? Suns fans don't know.
Yeah, none of the Mercury titles count for the Suns either. But
hold on, I think I got a Luka Suns jersey.
Oh
no! I'm sorry. It's just Barkley back there.
Yeah. All right, the voice you're hearing is Brendon Kleen, host of Locked On Suns. On today's show, we're going to focus on the Phoenix Suns. We're going to talk about what makes the Suns tick. Why are the Suns so incredibly good in the regular season? Let's start with the question we've kind of all been asking. Mikal Bridges, the best defender, best wing defender, maybe best overall defender on the Suns. Who does he guard, Luka or Brunson?
I think he guards Brunson to start games. But things change really quickly. I mean, we just got off a Pelican series where some of the best moments Bridges had was actually when he guarded Ingram in games 5 and 6 after struggling to do that in game 1 through 4. So look, in the NBA right now, especially with how the Mavs play, how the Suns play, it's going to be a ton of switching. But I think Crowder starts on Luka, and I think Mikal is going to start on his former teammate, his former champion teammate, Jalen Brunson.
His buddy.
Brunson has this incredible tweet that I found the other day. Bridges responded to him one day and said, "Boy, you can barely dunk." And Brunson quote tweeted it and said, "You got picked 10 and you're supposed to be a defensive stopper, but you can't even guard me." That was in 2019. So we'll see if that one comes back to haunt him in this. But Isaac, what changes if Mikal Bridges guards Luka or if he guards Brunson to start games at least?
One real quick. I tweeted out a video today of Brunson walking to the AAC wearing a Mavericks jersey back in 2019. Bridges. He was wearing Brunson's Mavericks jersey. It just shows how close of friends they are. So it should be a fun matchup for them. But, it goes into what we talked about this on yesterday's pod of, teams sometimes try to take these two different approaches to the Mavs. Do they try to take out Luka and let the other guys beat him? Or do they try to take out the other guys and say, Luka, you just cook and get your 40? And I was leaning towards kind of what you're saying, that I think they'd put, especially with Brunson having such a good start to the playoffs, that they'd put Bridges on Brunson, just try to take him out. And then put Crowder, Cam Johnson, whoever it is on Luka, and realize, hey, I get it. There were some people in our comments yesterday saying, if they put Crowder, Luka's going to torch him. Yeah, he will. He'll torch Crowder. But I think at some point you have to kind of pick and choose what you're going to kind of give up. And I feel like the Suns will do that, but I could be wrong on that.
Well, here's the other part of it too is, and we're going to get to Booker's health eventually, I'm sure. that's the other guy who would guard Brunson. When you saw at times, when KP was out of the game in the last regular season matchup, or even different teams besides the Mavs, Booker is kind of that second perimeter guy. I mean, he was guarding Middleton at times in the finals last year when Bridges wasn't in there. Like that's the guy they go to, and he has a hamstring injury right now. So I don't think you want to try to have him maneuver on the perimeter, guard Brunson for 20 minutes.
Tell us about the change in Booker as a defender, because we just got done hearing Rudy Gobert and his comments. I don't know if you guys saw that story today where Gobert, the comments about, well, look at Devin Booker. Why can't Donovan Mitchell be like Devin Booker, who's became this defensive guy? Tell us about his transformation from being like, he was terrible defensively to start his career. And now you're saying he guards the second best perimeter defender.
Usually does. I mean, again, some of that is that trickle down, right? You don't want Chris Paul doing it. So it's not to say like Booker's going to be an all defense guy like next season or anything, but it is way better than it was. I mean, I think it's just being an older player, really. I mean, he has decent length. He has good size. Like for a 2 guard, especially in the NBA right now, he's pretty big. He's strong. He's physical. He fights. He plays with good energy. He just transferred a lot of that stuff from offense to defense. And look, it helps when you have Deandre Ayton, Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges around you. You just have to kind of make the right rotations, fight through screens, do your job, and that's really what he's done. He's a good help defender too. He's gotten better there. On the ball, again, am I saying he's gonna stop Brunson, put the clamps on him? No, but he's usually the guy they put there. And you probably, I don't want to say hide Booker, but you want to make his job a little easier, at least until you know what his health looks like.
I went back and watched a little bit of that January 20th game earlier in the season, that last matchup between them. And yeah, I mean, like you said, like Porzingis was still on the team, like Tim, was still playing. He hadn't got hurt yet. It was a whole different Mavs team. And you almost have to, we were saying on yesterday's pod, but you almost kind of got to write off those 3 matchups this year, because who was playing, who wasn't. It was before the trade for Dallas. But I was looking at just some of the matchups to start the game. And like you said, they start off with Booker on Jalen Brunson. I thought an underrated thing that I forgot at the time was Dallas started the game with Maxey on Chris Paul. And we were talking on yesterday's pod of how we think something I'm watching is Dorian Finney-Smith, who's an amazing defender for us this year. Amazing, perfect 3-and-D guy for a playoff team. And like he will naturally, I think it's natural he'll line up with Booker, but how much will they put Dorian Finney-Smith's size and length on Chris Paul? Because that was obviously something Dallas tried to do early in the season of, hey, let's put length, let's put a bigger guy on Chris Paul to kind of, try to bother him there. I wonder if Dorian will get some cracks at Chris early in the series. I think
so. I mean, it speaks to the switching, right? It speaks to on both sides how much switching there's going to be. And look, the Suns, like Dallas has Maxey as a switch guy. He's obviously a little more versatile, a little smaller, but the Suns are willing to do that with Ayton too. They'll leave Ayton on quote unquote an island against Luka. They'll do it against Brunson. Maybe not every possession, but they're not afraid if there's 8 seconds on the clock to just let that sit there. And Ayton's held up a lot of the time. So it's going to be both sides.
And you have Torrey Craig, who's an all-world defender.
Quote from The Athletic, quote, can guard Luka.
Did that get said? I can't.
An anonymous scout. We can't just say it was The Athletic. It was an anonymous scout who told, The Athletic. They did a coach, exec, scout type thing, and they were talking about the defenders that Phoenix has, and it's like, and Torrey Craig can guard Luka. I'm like, can he? Can he?
Let's talk a little bit about that Suns Pelican series, because we saw the Suns struggle a little bit. We've not seen the Suns struggle very much this season at all. The Suns had a top 3 defense in the regular season. In the 2 losses against the Pelicans, game 2 and 4, the defense was awful for the Suns. Like so bad you wouldn't even believe it. Game 3 and 6, the defense was also bad. Why did the Suns struggle with the Pelicans so much in the first round? Compared to the way that they dominated the regular season.
Oh, I think some of it is what we were just talking about. They didn't have a great answer for Ingram. In some of those games. I mean, he took his game to another level, and then actually the Pelicans didn't shoot the ball well. So you'd think like, okay, in a 6-game series, maybe the team just got hot. They really didn't. It was Ingram and it was second chance points. When you're able to get second possessions through an offensive rebound and then you're just getting a layup on the second shot or a dunk, it's going to inflate your offensive efficiency a little bit. So very bizarre. Like if you go back and look at those box scores, it doesn't make any sense how some of those games turned out. But the Pelicans just fought, and Ingram played lights out most of the series, and they rebounded the heck out of the ball, and they just made it a rock fight. And then Booker missing, middle of the series didn't help either.
I looked at actually coming up next. Let's continue talking about that Pelicans Suns series that we're so excited to talk about.
An incredible tease from a professional podcaster. We'll talk about all that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline. It's a place to get all the best scores and odds and lines and props and everything you need for these series. They have, gentlemen, the Mavs Suns series line up already. Suns are minus 285 favorite. Yesterday, when we did this podcast, or at least the Mavs portion of this, it was minus 265. So it's already raised up just a hair, just a little bit, which I think is probably because of a lot of bets on the Suns, which I would imagine. But that is already up right now. They had game one up yesterday. They still do. The Suns minus 5.5. It actually went down. It was minus 6 to start, and now it's gone down a little bit. So if you're feeling good about either of those, go ahead to BetOnline, see what's available. They also have series props and everything you can check out. You can see total games. 7 games is the leading one, plus 200. Interesting. Plus 6 games is plus 215. 5 games is plus 250, and then 4 games plus 500. So if you think it's going for all the Suns fans that are at Locked On Mavs saying Suns in 4, put some money down on it. Put your money where your YouTube comments are. You can go check that out on BetOnline. Everything's available. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Brendon and Isaac, thanks for making Locked On Mavs and Suns your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. They have nightly recaps of every NBA game from local experts, including us. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. That's Locked On Now. All right, we've been talking about the Pelicans versus Suns series last round. What other ways did the Suns struggle? We were talking about the defense. What did Brandon Ingram do to make it hard for the Suns? You said he just had an incredible series and just went off. He was guarded by Bridges a lot. So why did he struggle with Brandon Ingram?
I think that it's actually a fascinating difference between Ingram and Luka, and I think that's one of the things I'm focused on heading into the next round is Ingram is a guy that I think you want to play physically and bump him off of his spots, whereas Luka, I think you want to put length and just get in his pass, get in his eye vision, get in his lane, his angle, make sure that he's uncomfortable in that way. Whereas they just struggle to put the bodies on Ingram, and especially Bridges just not being, a very big dude, a very physical defender in that same way. And you mentioned Torrey Craig. I do think he has a place in this series a little more than the last series because he can play a little small ball 5, whereas he wasn't able to do that when you had Valanciunas and guys like that on the floor. But he was food for Ingram as well, and he got DNPs for the last 3 games of the series. So they just didn't have a great answer. And then the other side, they were cold. I mean, they were cold as ice from deep. They barely squeaked out. Games 5 and 6, they made just enough shots. Booker hits that left wing 3 at the end of game 6 to kind of clinch it. They made the shots when they needed to, but you don't feel awesome about their floor spacing, their offensive flow right now coming out of that series at all. They're going to have to pick that up.
I was looking at the 2 games that New Orleans won in that series, and the first game that they won, they hit 17 threes in that game, which is a little against what Phoenix allows. We were talking about some stats yesterday. Suns are 4th in the league in opponent 3-point attempts per game. They only, or 3-point makes in a game, and they only average around 11 threes for their opponent. And so then they hit 17 in that first win. I thought was huge. I'm like, all right, is that the ground? Do we have to hit just a ton of threes? Is that the only way we can beat Phoenix? But then looking at that second game that New Orleans won, they shot 42 free throws. And now this is something that you guys do struggle with as far as fouling people, because you're like bottom 5, bottom 6 in the league in personal fouls and free throw attempts per game. It's just, it feels like, and this could be just a thing that we watch the Mavs all the time. It feels like we get haunted by Mavericks missed free throws. And, Dinwiddie missed, some in this past series. And
game 1,
they're shooting 79% in the first round. Dallas did.
You want to know one sign that the Suns don't care about free throws as much as the Mavericks do? In the last Locked On Suns, I was listening with Brendan and Aaron. They were like, yeah, the Suns broadcaster was just going after this referee, like this no-name guy that I've never heard about. And I was like, oh, great, here we go. And he goes, Tyler Ford. And I was like, oh my God. We know I was like, at this point with Luka and this team, we know every referee by name.
Has he teed up Luka a few times?
Oh, Tyler Ford is one that Luka, anytime he steps on the floor, Luka is just at his throat.
Not as bad as Tony Brothers, but I do have a question for you, Brendon. I think my biggest question for this entire series is just DeAndre.
Could you say it would define the series?
I'm not saying it defines the series. Is this DeAndre Ayton versus the Mavs small ball? And we've seen Dallas, last series, Dwight Powell's minutes went down a lot. I think his minutes will probably go back up because, the pick and roll numbers. I think DeAndre Ayton struggles a little bit in defending pick and roll, but Dallas has kind of found something with not just having Maxey out there as the small ball 5 at 6'10", but even throwing lineups with Dorian Finney-Smith out there at the 5. Do you think that can work against DeAndre Ayton? Or is Ayton so good and has more of an offensive touch than Rudy Gobert maybe ever will?
Meaning that he does have one.
It's there.
Is it possible, or do you expect Dallas, can DeAndre Ayton take advantage of that?
He absolutely can. I think he absolutely will. He took his game to another level in that first round. I mean, he's a guy that last year showed us stuff we had never seen come postseason time. He did that again. I think he's at an even higher level than he was in last year's playoffs. And he absolutely is somebody who is comfortable now. He has just an automatic right-hand hook. He has a turnaround jumper out of the post. He's not somebody who's going to bump you and dunk on your head. That's not his style, but he's figured it out without that, basically. And that said, though, I do think one problem is, are the Suns going to trust the math or the mismatch to just keep going to it? They don't love to do that. And understandably so, when you have better players, the pecking order is sorted out. They're not going to dump it to Ayton in 2-minute crunch time situation. So that mismatch starts to be less of a factor as the game goes on. I think you see it very much in the first half, less in the second half. And then I also think there's a difference between who that mismatch is. And to me, Kleba is 1,000% going to be the guy that I'm most interested in from the Mavs, because if he can hold up in those situations enough, then I think things change quite a bit. And you can see the Mavs switching working quite well. And some of those things you're talking about, where Kleba starts a possession on Chris Paul, then he can switch on to Ayton when they run a pick and roll. And neither one is really a mismatch because Kleba is so versatile. So I think it's going to be fascinating. He can do it against Finney-Smith. He can do it against, if it's a guard, obviously. But I don't know if he'll be able to do it. We saw him struggle a lot against Nicholas Batum in the conference finals last year, who was a pretty similar body type, similar type of guy to
Have you seen Frank Ntilikina play defense? Again, in the post?
You talk about that January 20th game. Ntilikina had some energy in that game. He came out and fouled like 3 guys on screens and whatever. I was like, oh, Frank, I forgot what you were like as a player. How's it going back in January?
Who has the best Frank in this series, Kaminsky or Ntilikina?
Kaminsky got cut. Kaminsky's not on the team anymore.
Get out of here, Frank. Frank the Tank.
Oh, you're just rubbing dirt in the wood.
You mentioned DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton in the post. I was just going to say, I think that could be one of those things to where if DeAndre Ayton's getting a ton of post touches. Now, he is incredible in the post. You're talking about the right hook. The difference between him going over his right shoulder compared to his left shoulder, if he goes to his left shoulder, which is the right hook, it's a 1.7 points per possession, according to Synergy. Goes the opposite direction, turns over his right shoulder, it's 0.8. So completely different there. So, but he dominates in the post. But I think it's one of those things where if you're Dallas, hey, keep throwing it to the post. We'll take it. Like if that means Chris Paul and Devin Booker's not getting their shots and their points and stuff, we'll just take those post possessions.
And that's why teams are going to switch on the Suns no matter what. It's like at the end of the day that the temptation to give it to him in that spot is the best option of all the things the Suns offense could do. If it's not an open 3 from the shooters, it's not Booker or Paul, and it's Ayton on a hook, like in the NBA right now, that's a pretty low percentage shot compared to all those other options. So it's probably going to be what we see.
And the Mavs have done their defense has changed so much since that trade, which we'll talk about in the next iteration of this pod. We're doing a 2-parter. This one focused on the Suns, the next one focused on the Mavs. Their defense has changed so much that they've become a really, really good rotating team. And so if they're going to throw it down to Ayton, best case scenario, he scores in that, but he probably takes up a lot of time. Worst case scenario, he the Mavs throw a double at him and then they have to throw it around again. And then the Mavs are able to they're able to rotate enough, and then that's like a worst case scenario for the Suns. But also, in the regular season, we talk about those regular season games not mattering much. Ayton played in the 2 games that Maxey didn't play, and Maxey played in the game that Ayton didn't play. So we haven't seen that matchup this year at all. That one's definitely going to be an interesting one to look out for. Coming up, I want to talk about what the Suns try and force teams to do and ask Brendon about it, see what his insights are on defense. And then we got to talk about the clutch. That was a huge thing for this Suns team. They're incredible in clutch games when it gets down to the wire. Why are they so good in those games, and how can the Mavs stop them from being so good at those? We'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about I already did that. Let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. Brendon, what's your favorite Built Bar flavor? I'm
a double chocolate guy. I'm an old school, just classic. Give me the chocolate.
Spicy. Okay.
Double chocolate, 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar. Have you guys ever had spicy chocolate? Like chocolate has
like mole or like stuff like that. It's delicious.
Oh yeah, Brendon is a cultured man. He knows. The Built Bars are not spicy, but they are very good for you. Go check them out. You can use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your entire order. Mint brownies, very solid one. Cherry Barcia is great. Raspberry for like the little fruit flavor. Peanut butter brownie is a great one as well. Churro Puff. The puff has marshmallow in it. I love the puffs. Go check them all out at built.com. Again, promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 to get 15% off your entire order at built.com. All right, Isaac. All right, Brendon, let's talk about this Suns defense a little bit, because I found something very interesting going through some of the stats and what the Suns defense, at least their scheme, tries to force teams to do. We talk a lot about these things in the playoffs, and let me walk you through here a little bit, Isaac. The Suns are 4th in the NBA in shots allowed at the rim. They don't allow any shots at the rim. Guess who was 5th? The Jazz. The Suns were 4th in the NBA in corner threes allowed. They don't allow any corner threes at all. Guess who was 3rd? The Jazz.
Utah.
The Suns were 19th in the NBA in non-corner threes, so they're okay with the above the break threes, the non-corner threes. Guess who was 18th in that? Utah. The Suns were 29th in the NBA in mid-range shots allowed. So they're totally fine with take as many mid-range shots as you want. Take all the mid-range shots. Guess who was 27th in that stat?
Lakers.
Utah. the Utah Jazz. This team, at least schematically, tries to do these same exact things that we saw the Utah Jazz try to do. Now, the difference between the Suns and the Jazz is Mikal Bridges, and I think probably Jay Crowder would probably be their best perimeter defender. The Jazz?
Chris Paul would be too.
I was going to say Chris Paul maybe
Heck,
as well.
Devin Booker might. They might have 4 legit guys better on the perimeter defense.
I mean, in that series, it was Daniel House, right? I think everybody in the Suns starting lineup is a better defender than Daniel House, so it's very different. No disrespect to the Jazz, but a little.
No. We can disrespect them.
No, we can. No, we fully can lean into that. But what is it about this scheme, and what do you think will be different from the Suns compared to the Jazz? Besides just the perimeter defenders that we just kind of all wasted.
Yeah, well, what you laid out, right? I mean, the Suns defend the math, right? They give you the shots that NBA defenses are supposed to, quote unquote, give up in the NBA right now, and they let you take the ones that are low percentage. I think what's interesting, just thinking about the Suns, and maybe you're Mavs fan audience not locked into the Suns quite the same way, is they are pretty they're chameleons. They'll change what they do. And that's part of what a lot of people look at Deandre Ayton and his stats, and it's like he doesn't block shots. He doesn't, switch all the time like Bam Adebayo or Jaren Jackson. Like, what is he? The answer is he does all of that stuff a little bit. And so, there will be times when he switches. There will be times when it's a really deep drop in the pick and roll and he's out around the rim. There will be times when it's a little bit of a shorter drop to take away some of that mid-range. There'll be times when he, hedges or blitzes by getting his feet out on the perimeter and making Luka or Brunson give up the ball if they want to try that for a bit. He can zone up. Like, they can do everything because of the versatility that Ayton has. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this series will be even more switching than the last one. And I think, though, the other part that jumps out to me is Brunson and Luka are both perfectly comfortable taking that mid-range shot. And they can take it and make it. And they both have this weird thing where they'll just go downhill off of a screen. And if the defender drops, they'll just post up at the elbow in the middle of a pick and roll. Like Brunson has sort of adopted that from Luka. That's a very Luka thing, but you see Brunson do it too, and that's an unorthodox thing to do. So I think the Mavs can punish what the Suns try to give up, if that answers your question. I think it'll be, math against math a little bit.
You're about to see this stack or Spain or whatever you want to call it. It's basically the same thing. It's called Spain, but Mavs like to call it stack. You're about to see this stack screen play about a million times that Luka's going to run that high pick and roll. They're going to bring Reggie or Dorian up to set this back screen on Deandre Ayton's man. And then it's just kind of like this, hey, let's just trust Luka to make this play there. And a lot of times it's mid-range or it's alley-oop to Dwight. Watch Dwight Powell alley-oop to start the game and to start the second half in game one. Just put it. Where's the BetOnline odds for that? Because that's happening. When it comes to DeAndre Ayton, though, what do you think this series could impact like his future with the Suns, with just his career? That if they go into this series in Dallas, let's say Dallas, small ball, all this stuff, and he doesn't have the best of series, and it's like, ooh, okay, maybe there's like a ceiling on him. Or what if they go into the series and y'all win in like 5, and DeAndre Ayton is a massive reason why you beat Dallas? Do you think this series could have that type of effect on DeAndre Ayton's like entire career?
Oh yeah, this series could be like what Brunson just did with the Jazz, right? I see a lot of similarities between these two series.
It's going to be a test, that's for sure. I mean, to me, Ayton's already proven that he's a max player, but I think I can't speak for that gentleman on a variety of topics, frankly. But the versatility stuff I was just talking about, to me, that's his case. Like the fact that he can do all those things. But you're exactly right to ask the question. I mean, every series is a question mark, and I mean, frankly, the best way to get your money and to stay where you are in the NBA is to go win a title. Teams don't tend to break it up after that. So if they go all the way, then that'll help a lot. And this series is going to be a big test for them. And he, as we talked about, has that matchup advantage. So it's going to require a big series. But I also look back to the Clippers series. I mean, I did say Batum was a little bit of a problem for him. Marcus Morris was a little bit of a problem. The swarming double team stuff that you talked about when they did get it into him in the post was its own thing. But you also look back at the box score. Ayton averaged in that series 38 minutes a game and 18 points, 14 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Like, he was a monster. He won game 4 of that series almost single-handedly. He had that alley-oop finish in game 2. Not that that's a great game, but, he used that advantage in a big moment. He's seen this before, so I don't think it'll be some sort of test that he's having to meet, but obviously he needs to play really well for the Suns to win this series.
He's so dang good. I'm happy for him because of just the whole Luka thing and the draft and all that. I think he's really, really good. I think he could look really good in Mavs jersey next year. But
I see why you were asking now. I get it.
It's funny how Ayton doesn't get any of, at least I haven't seen any of the flack for being the guy that got taken ahead of Luka.
Because he's good.
But it feels like, but I'm saying it feels like Trae Young does. Trae Young gets a ton of it. Like, oh, he was the guy that was traded. I'm like, hold on. Like, why doesn't Ayton get it?
Trae Young brings it on. That's because DeAndre Ayton's not out there playing villain and then getting losing in 5. I mean, that's true.
It's because DeAndre's in the desert. It's hot there. He's not cold.
Exactly. I'm glad we're bringing the puns out for this one. Wouldn't be a good podcast without it.
Oh man. What makes the Suns so good in the clutch? Like, we've seen this Suns team just be absolutely incredible, and their offense gets like insanely better from the rest of the game to in the clutch. What is it about this Suns team that makes them so good? We've seen the Mavs get beat 3 times this year in the clutch by the Suns. What is it about them?
Well, the Suns have 2 options late in games that are better than most teams' best option. Chris Paul is almost unguardable in the pick and roll unless you have an on-ball defender that's just going to blow up his normal routine, basically, make him uncomfortable. Unless you have somebody like that, he's going to get a pretty good shot for himself or a teammate every single time down. And then if that doesn't work, you have Booker, who can isolate, run off screens, run his own pick and roll. And then, obviously the Suns have built out a group of role players around that just fit perfectly. As long as those guys are making shots on the perimeter Ayton is finishing in the ways we've talked about. It's like it really becomes a pick your poison, and they just turn up the intensity. I mean, they're crazy late in games. Like it's a switch. You can see it flip, and they're just monsters. They're everywhere. They're turning defense into offense. They're just executing at a really high level. They're never going to beat themselves. I mean, they aren't going to do it.
That's a big difference between that Jazz series that the Mavs just saw. The Mavs waited around a lot for the Jazz to just beat themselves, and they did. And the Suns are not going to do that in this series.
Yeah, and it sucks too because I don't dislike this Suns team, like Utah.
Yet.
Well, I mean, Chris Paul is going to be annoying and pull out some antics and all this stuff, but
we'll probably start buying the FJ Crowder shirts.
They're for sale. They're really expensive. I don't really love the price point, but they're there for you.
Harvard's like, I gotta get money. Well, Jay's beloved in Dallas, beast. He's great. And
I forgot he played for the Mavs. He's played so many places. I lost track.
His origin story kind of begins here.
Yeah.
But I love Monty. Monty is just an amazing human being, and I got to connect with him one time in the hallways there at the AAC and just talk about faith and life and everything. And it's one of those conversations I'll never forget. But for the Suns, we know, you're the favorite. Okay, you're the best team in the league. We know everybody's going to pick the Suns to win this series in 5, 6, whatever it is. Most people will. We get it. Why would the Suns lose this series? From your perspective, how could Dallas win this series?
I mean, I think frankly, it's going to be close. I think if Brunson
and you can't just say Luka is a superstar.
No. I mean that's the truth, right? But I mean, I was actually talking about this with somebody just the other day when this series got finalized. Last year in the second round, it was a lot of the same stuff being said about Jokic. Now, that team was in a very different spot. Their momentum was a little on the downslope versus the upslope like the Mavs is, but it was you got to give Denver a couple games, and then who knows? And then it was nah, the Suns went out and blew them out. So one player can't make that difference. So I fully agree with you. But I think if Brunson can keep playing at the level that he's been at and puncture the Suns defense just enough to offset, help Luka out a little bit, and the Suns do struggle with the small ball, if the Mavs defense is able to really swarm and muck up a lot of what the Suns want to do, just blow up pick and roll, double Ayton in the post, blitz Chris Paul and Devin Booker, just play that sort of frenetic defensive style. We've seen the Suns get flustered by that a lot. That's their kryptonite. So if the Mavs can kind of turn into that type of team and do what they need to do on offense like they have been, then I think it's going to be a series for sure.
Go listen to our other episode. We'll probably drop the next episode of this crossover part 2 tomorrow on our feeds, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Brendon Kleen, Locked On Suns. Nick Angstadt and Isaac Harris, Locked On Mavs. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs, Locked On Suns.
Peace out.
Boom.